Today we got another Q&A episode for you, heavily focused on AI. Stay tuned. Once again, welcome to the Digital Customer Experience Podcast with me, Alex Turkovich. So glad you could join us here today and every week as we explore how digital can help enhance the customer and employee experience. My goal is to share what my guests and I have learned over the years so that you can get the insights that you need to evolve your own digital programs. If you'd like more info, need to get in touch, or sign up for the weekly companion newsletter that has additional articles and resources in it, go to digitalcustomersuccess.com. For now, let's get started. Greetings and welcome back to the Digital CX Podcast, the show where we talk about all things digital and CX. My name is Alex Turkovich. You're listening to episode 90 of the show, and another solo episode for you. We've had an interesting couple of weeks here just because we had the holidays, and I did a couple of additional solo shows over the holidays where we talked about like NotebookLM and having that create podcasts for you, which is super cool, very fun. And I'd love to hear from you if you've played around with it at all, and if you've used it. One of the things that I realized is that we didn't really talk about, specific use cases of that during that episode. So we may dig into that a little bit today. But first and foremost, I do want to extend a really warm welcome to our two show sponsors for the next little while here. First off, I'd like to welcome back Vitally. Appreciate the sponsorship there and keeping this content going. Vitally's been a sponsor before. They're back for another round, and so you'll be hearing from them throughout these episodes. Big difference between last time and this time is that I've actually become a heavy Vitally user these days, and so I like to talk about stuff that I can stand behind. Also want to extend a big welcome to QueryPal as a second show sponsor, who do amazing things in terms of support, ticket deflection, and artificial intelligence. We're actually testing them right now as well. Welcome to our new show sponsors. So today I have a couple of things that came to my inbox after last week's episode that I felt were worth kind of bringing up in this episode. A couple of questions that came in that are AI related, got a couple of non-AI related things as well. But one of the fundamental things that did come through was this question of, when is your program ready for artificial intelligence? We talk a lot about the technology. We talk a lot about the benefits that it brings to you. We talk a lot about, the use cases and all of that kind of, fun stuff. But what we don't really spend a lot of time on, and what vendors also don't spend a ton of time on, is what you need in place in order to be ready for artificial intelligence. There are several use cases that I have in mind as I'm talking about this. One would be implementing a chatbot, a customer-facing chatbot, for instance. Another might be implementing a copilot for your internal teams, which are two kind of interrelated things. Another one might be a chatbot to help you generate content. And so the fundamental kind of answer here is it depends a little bit on the type of artificial intelligence tool that you're looking for and shopping for. But fundamentally speaking, one of the things that you are going to likely need in order to be ready is the proper data. I know you've heard us talk about data over and over and over again. We talk about it a lot because it's super important. In this case, though, I want to raise two specific things in terms of your data. And let's use the use case of a chatbot. The first is, you don't really need super clean customer data per se if you're implementing that base level of chatbot that answers some product questions, right? You can literally throw it out in a link or however that platform works to your customer so that they can answer some basic questions, and it won't necessarily need to be trained on the customer specific data for that foundational level. However, if you want to get more sophisticated with the artificial intelligence that is customer facing, For instance, you might want it to use some semblance of personalization. You may want it to respond in a way that's appropriate for the kind of user the person is. Are they an admin? Are they an executive? Are they an end user? Whatever that may be, you may want to personalize the responses based on their role. You may want to include their first name in responses. You may want the chatbot to know their email address so it can email things out. Like those kinds of customer-specific personalization elements need customer data. But I think more fundamentally, if you're going to install a chatbot, you got to have the content on the back end to train the artificial intelligence to answer the questions that are coming in appropriately. If you're expecting to install a chatbot and have it be able to answer your product questions without doing much training, then I think you've been led astray by someone. Because ultimately, the more data and the more quality data that you can feed the chatbot, the more accurate and the more thorough your responses are going to be when somebody goes to ask it a question. Now, what does that look like? That can be any number of things, and these are all kind of platform specific. Some do it, they all do it a little bit differently. Most chatbots will allow you to train it using your knowledge base. Right. So if you have written a bunch of articles, that is prime territory for, training a chatbot. Another is your support tickets. You can elect to have a chatbot trained on your support tickets and what responses that you've provided to customers previously that may not be reflected in your knowledge base. Some chatbots allow you to train it on Slack channels. And I think the important call out here is that you do have to be a little bit careful about what information you train your chatbot and what you don't. And for instance, you don't want to release the hounds, so to speak, on your entire Slack instance, because then you'll effectively be training that chatbot to respond to things that you may not want your customers to know about. So you do have to be pretty guarded in what you're training that chatbot. So those are really the two fundamental things. Like fundamentally speaking, what content are you feeding it? What content are you training it on? The more the merrier, but not at the sacrifice of quality. And so when people ask me about data readiness or readiness to start using AI, especially if it's content generation on a product and those kinds of things, my advice is always start writing. Start getting your team writing articles. If you're sitting on a knowledge base with 50 articles in it, it's probably not going to cut the mustard. In fact, 100 may not be enough. 200 may not be enough. It just depends a little bit on your product complexity as well, and how many different topics that are potentially, going to be asked by your customers. Now, there are some pretty cool tools that can help you with that sort of content generation. A couple of ones that kind of stand out. There are a few solutions out there which help you specifically with knowledge base. One in particular is called Ariglad, Ariglad. We've been testing them out a little bit as well. So basically, you train it on your existing content, you train it on your support tickets, you train it on specific Slack channels. And what it will do is it will suggest updates to existing articles as well as suggest new articles and write them for you. Very cool tech, and does a really good job of like uncovering additional articles you may want to, write some things about. And there are other solutions that do that. In fact, some chatbot vendors do that intrinsically. So like Maven AGI, for instance, has this kind of feature where it will suggest articles and suggest updates to articles based on, some of the conversations that have been happening with customers using the chatbot. So there's some cool things out there that can help you essentially maintain your knowledge base. Some others that are worth mentioning, something like Clueso is really cool. We've been checking out Clueso recently as well. Clueso, I could say Clueso one more time. Clueso is a platform that allows you to either record video using the platform or upload video of like product demos and screen shares and those kinds of things, and it'll turn it into basically AI regenerated, rewritten video snippets with professional sounding voiceovers, as well as articles. So by uploading one kind of cruddy demo, you can spit out videos and articles without having to write them all from scratch. You can even do things like, create GIFs out of the images and things like that that it creates. So there's all kinds of cool tools. I'm just scratching the surface. There is a tech stack page on the website that you can go check out if you want to go see what other platforms I've recommended in the past or, are out there to help you with some of that content creation. Another thing that came out of last week's episode is Mike and I had a somewhat lengthy back and forth about being behind on AI and if you are behind on AI, what you should kind of do about it. We didn't really get into the specifics there. So I wanted to provide a couple of specifics off the back of that conversation, because I did get a couple of questions about, okay, well, what should I do to really increase my, I guess, language in artificial intelligence? The first thing I would just recommend blanket statement is start using ChatGPT. Start using Perplexity. And I've talked about this, the difference between the two on the channel or on the podcast before, but essentially ChatGPT, it's changing a little bit just in terms of its access to the internet, but ChatGPT tends to be kind of like a companion more so than Perplexity, which is basically a research engine. It's kind of like, a lot of times I'll use Perplexity over Google just because it does, really good internet research and summarizes things for you really nicely. Kind of like Google search results do today, but just better. So my first piece of advice would be just start using that stuff on a regular basis. Anything you would Google normally, just pulling up Google real quick, you use ChatGPT or Perplexity to do that. And start getting in the habit of using it and seeing what it comes back with, because one of the other benefits there is that you can follow up with it and essentially have a conversation with artificial intelligence that way, so that it learns a little bit about how you want to learn and how you think, and then you in turn get the details that you're looking for and get the accurate answers that you're looking for, because we all know a Google search typically doesn't return what you want it to the first time around. These next few are a couple of suggestions just for leadership in general and some of the tooling that you might want to look at implementing if you are looking to essentially get your organization into AI. One is any number of like ticket deflection, ticket co-pilot systems. The sponsor of this show, for instance, QueryPal, is a good example of that, but essentially systems that will suggest answers to questions that come in real time, so that when your agents or when your CSMs go to respond, they'll have a baseline or maybe even a draft of an answer ready to go that they can just edit and fire off. That can save a ton of time and really increase the amount of throughput that your teams can handle, just because some of that grunt work is being done for them and research is being done for them. So basically like a co-pilot situation. Another is just in the realm of content creation. There are so many cool tools like HeyGen, like Clueso, that are really focused on content creation, and especially video content creation. That has come a long way in a very, very short amount of time. And there really isn't an excuse anymore for your knowledge base articles to not have videos in them, and for you not to have really thorough product walkthroughs and demos and things like that you can then go and install either in product or have send out via guides, or there's any number of things that you can do once you have that content created. But a lot of times, as you know, content creation tends to be, the root of a lot of problems just in terms of getting off the ground with self-serve motions. So look for tools, look for artificial intelligence tools that can help you create that content. And I'm not saying that the content should be solely created by artificial intelligence, because while it's good, it's not there yet. I can tell you right now, I would not want to sit down and listen to 30 minutes of AI generated video, because the voiceover still, you can just tell it is AI generated. Do I mind listening to that for a minute or two or three for a quick walkthrough of something? Absolutely not. I think that is a prime use case for AI video generation. Those really short walkthroughs that you can just pump out one to the next. Great use case for AI. Another place to look at implementing artificial intelligence is via your integrations. I will use Zapier as an example for right now. Make.com also has something similar. A lot of tools are now launching artificial intelligence configuration help. In other words, you prompt what you want to accomplish, and the tool will then spit out a configuration suggestion based on what it is you wanted to do. Can be extremely useful, especially when you're building very complex integrations and when you're wanting to do a lot in terms of connecting different tools and data sets and those kinds of things. It can really take the grunt work out of building integrations between systems. So definitely look into how AI can help you with those kinds of things. And then, another thing that we mentioned in the last question was just around chatbots in general. There are tons of vendors out there now. A couple that come to mind: Maven AGI. Intercom is interesting because Intercom has a standalone AI chatbot that whether you use Intercom for support tickets or Zendesk for support tickets or whatever you use for support tickets, Intercom and their AI chatbot can actually, it can plug into any system there. So that is definitely something that is relatively easy to stand up, but again, you need to have the content to train the chatbot. It's kind of a vicious cycle. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, another thing I wanted to make sure that we touched on today was in response to the 2 holiday episodes that I published, all about using Google's NotebookLM